listener production.
Hi, Natarsha Belling with you and welcome to the afternoon edition of The Briefing. Coming up in our deep dive, the federal government has just announced a major overhaul of the controversial NDIS that will affect tens of thousands of Australians. We unpack the major changes. But first, let's check the afternoon headlines this Wednesday, the 20th of August. Prime Minister Anthony Albanese has hit back at Benjamin Netanyahu after the Israeli leader branded him weak and accused the Prime Minister of betraying Israel and abandoning Australia's Jews. Mr Albanese says he treats all world leaders with respect and engages in a diplomatic way.
Don't take these things personally. I engage with people. Diplomatically, he's had similar things to say about other leaders. What I say is that Israel, of course, increasingly there is global concern. And global concern because people want to see an end to the cycle of violence that we have seen for far too long. That is what Australians want to see as well.
Israel's ambassador to Australia has appealed for calm from his country after Mr Netanyahu's latest attack. Diplomatic tensions between Australia and Israel continue to escalate. On Monday, Home Affairs Minister Tony Burke cancelled the visa of an Israeli politician set to visit Australia. Israel retaliated by revoking visas for Australian diplomats in the West Bank. A damning report has been publicly released into Victoria's childcare system after horrific sexual abuse allegations. The rapid child safety review was ordered after a Melbourne childcare worker was charged with numerous child sex offences. The scathing report has found the safety of children in the state has been compromised because of systematic failures, underfunding and outdated practices. Here is Victorian Premier Jacinta Allen speaking a short time ago.
Today we announced that we are accepting all of the 22 recommendations contained in this review. This review will reform child safety practices. It goes to the hiring of staff, the safety of children, reform of the sector. It also builds on the work that we have already taken to ban personal devices in childcare centres and also to establish a Victorian register of childcare workers. We need to go further, which is why putting child safety first will see the establishment of a new independent regulator.
The report made 22 recommendations with a strict 12-month guideline for the sweeping changes to be enforced, including establishing a new independent regulator, more funding and an overhaul of current working with children checks. A disgraced New South Wales MP, Daryl Maguire, has been sentenced to 10 months in jail for lying to the state's corruption watchdog. The former Wagga Wagga MP, whose controversial relationship with Gladys Berejiklian saw the New South Wales Premier resign, was found guilty of misleading the Independent Commission Against Corruption during its 2018 investigation into Canterbury Council. ICAC's Operation Dasher heard phone taps of Mr Maguire discussing the potential sale of a unit site on behalf of a Chinese developer. Mr Maguire was set to make more than $700,000 had the deal gone through. Mr Maguire has been granted bail pending an appeal. Now it's time to get into our deep dive with the NDIS overhaul announced today by the Federal Health Minister. Mark Butler claims the NDIS was not fit for large numbers of children with autism and developmental delays, promising the changes will ensure the scheme is sustainable. But exactly who will be affected, and will the overhaul unfairly target those who need the support the most and not apprehend the growing number of alleged dodgy providers who are exploiting a broken system? Professor Adam Guastella from the Brain and Mind Centre at Sydney University joins us with his expert analysis. Adam, thanks so much for joining us. The majority of us saw this massive announcement this afternoon from our Federal Health Minister, Mark Butler. This caught many by surprise. Do you agree?
Yeah, I think not many people I know saw this coming. So, yeah, it's a big surprise announcement.
In regards to the devil's always in the detail, we know that it seems the NDIS is broken. One may argue that the people that need it the most aren't getting it, and there are some allegedly dodgy providers out there rorting the system. Your initial reaction to what the Health Minister is proposing, what are your thoughts?
Well, if we go back a year ago, the government announced a big autism strategy with very little funding attached to it. So there were lots of great ideas presented in that autism strategy, but we really wanted to see a big investment in a national approach to support kids and adults with autism. This is part of the way, so it's stepping up and providing a sizable investment and suggesting changes that hopefully will make a big difference for children and their ability to access support and to improve outcomes. It's a first step in a needed response from the government.
Adam, there will be many people concerned out there. These changes are set to affect thousands of Australians. There would be a lot of very concerned people that they will be affected by loopholes in the system. The federal government is promising to roll out a new program. Can you see any concerns that people may slip through the cracks here, especially if they are suffering or living with autism?
I mean, I think there's not a lot of detail in exactly what is going to be delivered from the $2 billion. We know that in the announcement, there's going to be greater investment in primary care, in childcare centres, that there's going to be items invested in Medicare for occupational therapy and speech therapy. So there's statements around it, the types of things that people might be able to get, but there's no details in the how. And I think that's the big issue that plagued the NDIS, because we know that the wealthiest individuals in our society developed great ways of getting support they needed, but the most disadvantaged communities didn't. And the detail there about how this rollout is going to occur and how it's going to give families the needed interventions and supports to make a difference, the devil is in the detail, and it's not there today.
I don't want to be negative about this, but one may argue that, this is both sides of government. If they got it so horribly wrong with the NDIS, do you think anything's been learnt about stopping these loopholes and making sure the right service gets to the people that need it?
Well, I think there's been an enormous amount of awareness that leaving it up to dodgy operators to provide high-cost services is not the way to go moving forward. I hope moving forward that the decision-making around the types of services are given to experts and multidisciplinary team members who have the skills and the knowledge, and also the community, to make sure people get the right supports. And if they listen to caregivers and the community, I think that's what will be delivered. But I think that there's big warning signs that there was so much hope in the NDIS that it would deliver what families needed, and it didn't. And so we need to learn from those mistakes. And I hope over the next couple of years we can get the system right.
Mark Butler has said today that if we don't make major changes, and all of us seem to be on the same page that changes need to be made and also loopholes closed, that he doesn't believe the NDIS is sustainable long term. Would you agree with that?
Look, I think the fundamentals of the NDIS are sustainable long term in a different structure. So under the current framework, where dodgy operators can charge whatever they like and families can get overserviced in urban communities in particular, that funding system is never going to work. But the principles of the NDIS, where children and adults get the support they need, early intervention ideally, to make a difference to their functioning, I think that is, the principles of that are fundable, they are sustainable, just not under the current framework.
Adam, there were reports in the media a couple of days ago saying that the amount of people that are actually joining the NDIS or being part of the program, I think the stats were something like 7 out of 10 were children with autism. Are you concerned? The Health Minister has said these children are being overserviced. Do you disagree with that?
I think that there's evidence of some overservicing for some kids with autism, but on a whole, absolutely not. The families, particularly from disadvantaged communities, can't even access the services and supports they need. And it's not really about overservicing, actually. It's more about actually making sure that families get the interventions and supports that make a difference. And often, families aren't even getting that. They're just getting low quality, low expertise interventions that actually don't make a lot of difference, that cost a lot. So if we can sort of reduce families getting access to, if you like, dodgy supports, and more families getting access to high quality supports, that'll make a big difference. And that's going to be in the detail, and we need to make sure that that's what this new strategy is all about.
Also, as you know firsthand, Adam, it makes such a Huge difference, this early intervention on so many different fronts. What have you seen from a positive point of view about the early intervention when these children and family get the right support, the difference it can make?
Yeah, I mean, I think that we have to think long term. So when children earlier in life get the right interventions, it can impact their ability to communicate, their ability to achieve academically. Long term, we know that it causes occupational outcomes that are lifelong in terms of what children are able to achieve. It can affect social relationships long term. Investment in early intervention is a no-brainer because it produces such lifelong impacts that will cost the community if it's not provided over a lifespan. So, there's no doubt that early intervention should be the priority. And listening to the minister, that is certainly his focus.
What message would you give the federal government? Because both sides of politics, I think, long-term want to do the right thing. I think the intention was there. It was the rollout and the loopholes that were exploited by people that, are the major problems. What would your message be to the federal government right now to get it right this time?
Well, I think you've got to get the right people in the room and to make sure that the decision-making is based on high-quality, sophisticated assessment. It doesn't need to be like a 2-year wait time for it, but it needs to be evidence-based and evidence-driven. It needs to address the actual needs of the caregivers, not a box that we all think they might need. And it needs to be evidence-based and responsive. So I think that if we have a great assessment framework, a framework that can track children and to see the improvements, and they can be guided by specialist teams, then I think we've got a great system. And I think the fear would be that families are given yet another low-quality, low-outcome service. That's not going to make any difference.
We really appreciate your analysis on such a big day. Thanks so much, Adam.
Thank you so much.
That was Adam Guastella from the Child Neurodevelopment Team at Sydney University's Brain and Mind Centre. And that's it for this episode of the afternoon edition of The Briefing. We'd love you to subscribe or follow us on Instagram at The Briefing Podcast, and we'll be back in your feed tomorrow morning. I'm Natarsha Belling. Thanks for your company.